Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to see you today. My name is Dustin Cormier, and you're watching an episode of How to Rock Astrology. Today's episode, we are going to be diving into the nature of Venus in the sign of Aquarius. This is just basically a part of my Venus in the Signs series. The caveat I like to give is that I'm what I like to call a tropical Vedic astrologer. Excuse me, I abide by Western measurements, and I typically abide by the Vedic philosophy of interpreting astrological placements. So, what I like to say is that if you're a Westerner, then this will add, I think, some definition to your Western idea of astrology. Feel free to hang out with me and see if it fits. A lot of this, I go through my own idea of this sign placement, but then in the end, we're also going to be reading from Western texts, one of them being Erotic Astrology by Phylis, Vega, to give a sort of light-hearted vision of the personality of the sign, as well as Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook, sort of doing the same thing. So I always like to add my little Vedic bit of wisdom to what's going on with the sign combination. First thing to keep in mind is that this is just the sign combination. We're talking about Venus in its sign, and there's so much more to each planet than just what sign it's in. That's why most astrologers these days, they really try to get away from the cookbook situation. I'm just trying to fix my hair because it's kind of funky right now. Story of my life. That's okay. I won't be bothered by it too much. Most astrologers these days are trying to get away from the cookbook thing because, it's like trying to digest what an ingredient is all by itself. It's going to be something completely different when you put it in the soup. Just trying to understand an onion, it's not going to do you so much when you combine the flavor of an onion with the lemon and the thyme and all the other things that you mix the onion with into a stew. Talking about Venus and Aquarius isolated is not going to mean anything until you consider the whole stew. And this is, including like what Venus's, what friends of Venus are aspecting it. That's typically Mercury and Saturn are friends of Venus. As well as benefics just generally. Like a benefic moon can actually be, the moon starves Venus, so that's not a good thing if the moon is aspecting Venus. But let's say benefic Mercury or Jupiter aspecting Venus, if it's got overall strength in the chart, if it has Shadbala strength in the chart, if it's closer to the bottom of the chart, this gives it Digbala strength. All these things kind of play into what Venus is and what it's doing. Even different rising signs will take to Venus differently. Venus is considered an enemy to the sun, for example. So if you're a Leo rising, like I am, then Venus is a difficult planet to have to keep consciousness of and to deal with, because the sun is the king who wants to be kingly. So that's why Leo risings can often have troubles with Venus in its sign. So all these things you got to keep in mind when you're considering the strength of Venus. The reason is because when we're talking about this cookbook type of thing, I'm conveying what Venus generally is in the sign of Aquarius, which is pretty neutral, plus actually not a bad placement because it's being delighted by its friend Saturn, by being in the Saturn sign, as we're going to talk about. But just, I always like to give the caveat that you can't tell the nature of a Venus just by its sign. In this case in particular, we're talking about Venus in Aquarius. By my reckoning, I would say this is kind of a sort of halfway placement between being good or bad, simply because it's in the middle of the two debilitation and exaltation points. Sorry, I was thinking about the moon for a second there. Venus in Aquarius is actually right next door to Pisces. I should have had that on my brain, and I'm sorry about that. Moving on. Venus in Aquarius is right next door to Pisces, and Venus is exalted in Pisces. And I always say that exaltation works by proximity. If you're closer in proximity to the exaltation point, it's a good thing. It gives certain strengths in Shadbala and certain overall strength of the planet. As well, Venus is delighted by its friend Saturn here. So this is actually, should have been more clear on this from the beginning. Venus in Aquarius is a great placement for Venus by sign. Being close to a Pisces means that Venus in Aquarius is not living for an expectation or an ideal of the type of partner that they want. They accept what feels closest and easiest in the soul. And they tend to like things that are comfortable, being closer to Pisces. When Venus is closer to Virgo, it tries to be appreciated for not needing comfort, for not needing luxury, for not needing much sentimental affection. And that's not really how Venus is supposed to work. Venus is supposed to become comfortable in the right sentimental affection, in a proper earthly rhythm. You know, these days there's not enough feminine consciousness. There's the patriarchal capitalism we live in makes it difficult for us to drop the linear narrative and hang out. Venus, anywhere close to Pisces, understands the importance of this intrinsically and can still work, can still hold the difficult moments in relationship, but they do it because they actually admire love for its own sake. This is a Venus that's open to its own nature. Now, by being in the sign of Saturn, what we observe is that there is a reserve. There is a pulled back aspect of this Venus, but it's actually somewhat of a good thing. Essentially, they won't fully open their heart to something until they find a relationship that functionally, practically has been proven to emotionally work and to work well. The fact that Venus is delighted by its friend Saturn here, you know, there's two ways that I convey any sign placement, really. It's the closeness to the exaltation point, which this is very close. And then there's what's called dignity in Vedic astrology. Dignity comes from the planet's relationship to the dispositor of the sign. You know, it's like Mars is a warrior. You don't want to put Mars, the warrior, in the sign of Virgo, because Mercury is an enemy to Mars. Mercury likes to plan and manage and do it playfully and to give itself lots of room for options. Mars is supposed to pick the best incisive thing right away and then be instinctive. So the warrior does not do well in the sort of playful manager's position of Virgo or Gemini. In the same way, Venus is kind of like a gardener in a sense. It wants to be able to slowly move towards gardening the things it wants to do in its own time. By being in the sign of Aquarius, there is a sentimental consciousness. There is a, you know, Aquarius is funny because they are this sort of axle of industriousness versus sentimental affection and love and letting go of things. You know, anyone with heavy Aquarius placements tend to work as hard as they play, and they try to make those in a balance because the energy of playing gives them energy to work, and the energy of working makes them desirous to play. And this is a good position for Venus to be in. Venus in Pisces abides by the same kind of consciousness. So Venus in Aquarius likes to play hard, considers it important to hang out and to have fun and enjoyable things to do while hanging out with the people that it hangs out with. And depending on other placements in your chart, this can even help you in your career. You like to hang out with your boss and go on a fishing trip with your boss, and you're used to enjoying the human experience of dropping work. So when you're hanging out with your boss, you're got your eye on still being a professional, still looking cool, still abiding by the status ladder that you're trying to climb, but no one could tell. It's the sunglasses are on, and it's just like, you know, like, oh, have you heard this song yet? Check this banger out, bang. And then you'll play a song, and everyone's like, cool, you know, because you're thinking about those kinds of things. You know, Venus in Aquarius is someone that is making song lists to play at the party. You know, anyone with any benefic in Aquarius tends to have this kind of consciousness. But for Venus, this is the case. Now, we're going to talk about Venus being delighted by its friend Saturn in just a moment. First thing I want to do is kind of talk a little bit about what Venus is in the chart. Venus and the Moon share the province of what's called the second chakra, the water chakra. It's also called the Svadhisthana chakra. Everybody has all these chakras as metaphysical facts of the energetic human energy field, the energy body. And we all need to keep them in a balance in order for us to not be leaking in any of the bucket that we serve to from the beginning to the end of time. If we have any holes in this bucket, we don't have as much energy, as much juice, vitality, and power going from behind to ahead. So these need to be in a balance. The first chakra in Vedic astrology is generally conveyed by Mercury, and the second chakra is conveyed by Venus and the Moon, the watery planets. This information is coming from Ernst Wilhelm in his Graha Sutras. And he defines this through the Panchatattvas, the 5 essences. The first 5 chakras are the planets Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter at the throat, and then the Sun and the Moon take the province of the Ajna chakra, the 6th chakra. So the Moon and Venus both share the province of the water chakra, the Svadhisthana chakra. Venus ought to be used to connect you to the feeling that you have inherent value or goodness, which attracts people to interact with you. This gives subjective enjoyment in life, which makes working hard feel more satisfying. It's something that you're excited to be done your work in order to hang out with your friends. And also it even means that you are a natural person who's social, and you'll probably be someone, this is Venus in an air sign. You might even be someone whom's, for your industrial business work that you do in networking and these sorts of things, it's aided by the fact that you just inherently are interested in people, interested in what's hot and what's new and what's the buzz, and to see where technology is going. And so Venus adds to Aquarius as much as Aquarius adds to Venus, right? And Aquarius is an important element of everyone's climb towards whatever business they are trying to move through, what their career and what have you, being ruled by Saturn. So Venus is also adding to the sign of Aquarius here, which means that you'll probably enjoy people probably enjoy you at work, especially if Venus is well placed. If Venus is not well placed in Aquarius, if it's conjunct Saturn or combust the sun or anything like this, or if it's just got other illnesses or afflictions, then you will seek to be appreciated for this, but you will have other planets that are too loud and they don't allow you to express this enjoyment of technology and social things and interesting conversation while you're at work. And when you get home, it would likely be the same thing. You'd probably be too busy with hobbies or whatever it is that would obstruct you from actually connecting with your lover in a sentimental way and being interesting to them, moving through things with them. Ultimately, Venus is supposed to give us kind of enjoyment at work in a social way, but more so to have something to enjoy doing after work so you don't get stuck at work, so you don't become a wet blanket for your boss in a way that's ultimately not fulfilling to you. Although different people will play on that and ultimately still come home and party and play hard with their lover, even if their boss asks them to stay for an extra 3 hours because they are schmoozing with the boss in that sort of way. So this Venus here is capable of doing that, at least by sign, finding this balance. Venus is all supposed to give us, a passive sense of satisfaction. So especially when we're connecting with others, Venus and the Moon are supposed to work smarter, not harder, to connect you to the energy grid of love and support from people that are all around you. If your moon is weak, if it's debilitated, if it's got problems with it, Venus kind of has to compensate for it. And here, Venus can compensate, at least by sign, for anything that the moon might be lacking. You know, if you find it difficult to think about connecting with people, Venus here, it will find ways of connecting with others. And it makes you valuable. It gives you mutual benefit. Because Venus is a two-way street in a certain way, where we want what's in the Venus in us, but we also project it. We project what we want, essentially. You know, if you are a dark, mysterious kind of person, you're going to project that aura, and you're probably going to be discovered by someone who has something in them that can appreciate that, right? This is what Venus is all about, is appreciation, how we get appreciation, what we want to be appreciated for. It's the other side of the moon. The moon is kind of like the needs that we have and the type of people that we want to connect with. Venus is sort of like what we want to be appreciated for and what we put out that we could be appreciated for. And as well, we also seek people who are somewhat like our Venus in a certain way, especially men in particular, or people who identify with the male consciousness. You know, Jupiter's satisfaction is a little bit about more what we do. It's more about like the game of golf. Venus is what is like a sport. It's what shows that we have more value than another person around us. Really, Jupiter is the planet of marriage in astrology, having a reason to connect with someone because you share values and a vision of the future that is moving towards the same dharma of Jupiter. Venus is more like, how are we going to be matched on our enjoyment of each other on the journey along the way? That's the 7th house consciousness. Which, by the way, is another thing, you know, having a good 7th house planets there, or a 7th lord, the dispositor of the 7th house cusp, is going to also convey whether you can get a good partner for yourself. So, when Venus is well dignified by sign, it aligns with situations that bring mutual benefit in the long run. And if not, then it works and lives with situations and people that make it feel like a task to take care of them, a task to deal with them. And your Venus in Aquarius, while it's well placed by sign, it can still have this. It can still feel like a task to be sentimental with people. But ultimately, this is a Venus, especially because, this is when I'll say this now, this Venus is delighted by Saturn, which means that Saturn has an earthy crevasse of memory that is reflective in an earthy sense. It kind of, Saturn really rules the air chakra, but it also, Capricorn and Aquarius rule the first chakra in a different sense, you know. There's so many ways to convey how the chakras are. They're kind of an entanglement of many different associations. One of the associations of the first chakra is Capricorn and Aquarius. Venus being in Aquarius does some help for that first chakra in a certain way. Makes you able to accept the need to work at survival things and annoying things that need to be done. But also, since you've taken care of those, now you don't need to focus on them so much. This is the balance that Aquarius can have when benefic planets are there. Finds a balance of work and play. Now, Venus being delighted by Saturn here, because again, you're in a sign ruled anciently by Saturn. Vedic astrology considers that Saturn is the primary rulership of Aquarius. Uranus could be considered as a secondary sub-ruler, still a debated thing in my universe, but I digress. The primary rulership is undebated as being Saturn for the sign of Aquarius. So Venus is in Saturn's sign. The gardener is in the sign of a consciousness that is conducive to the gardener, the slow patience of Venus. So Saturn delighting Venus in this position shows that when someone does something good for you, you have a memory of it. And when something does something that doesn't work for you, that's bad for you, you deeply have a memory of that too. And this is a Venus that essentially feels things so deeply in this way that it instinctively knows that I should really feel out. You know, it's important for Venus generally, in my opinion, to try the pie before you buy. Open your heart and connect yourself to many people, and just open yourself to what is deep in their core. Don't be afraid to connect with them. And as you do it in a way that you can just feel them out. And then after a while, the Saturn in you will deeply get carved samskara grooves and memories of personalities that you've worked with, that you've worked deeply and intimately with, that ultimately are functional and practical for the nature of your own psyche. You know, you hang out with somebody and you go on a date with them and they say, hey there, like I was just thinking, I was thinking of taking you out to the movies. And they ask you, like, what kind of movie would you like to see? And you're like, oh, thanks for asking. I was kind of thinking of going seeing, I don't know, this movie, the Marvel, whatever, some kind of movie going on. And they're like, yeah, okay, all right, let's do it. You remember that and reflect it, even if it's just like something that's intrinsic in you. You felt how good it was to have somebody ask that of you. You see how functional it is, that it opened up the will of your pleasure. So you apply it to them as like a turn of phrase that just intrinsically happens. So the next weekend, you tell them, you text them, and you say, hey, how's it going? You gave me the idea for the movie. Now, what would you like to watch? What would you like to do for a date if you had to do a date? You reflect what they gave you because it felt good. In the same way, you'll also feel deeply when someone does something that you don't like. And the Venus in Aquarius has to communicate that before they cut them off, which is a very good thing. Lots of Venuses get so excited. This is Saturn delighting this Venus, is that it needs to objectively see scientifically whether this person will continue the behavior or whether it was just a flash in the pan thing, but the person doesn't actually always do that, or whether this is what the person is. So you'll communicate it. I don't like it when you do this with your nails. It's something I actually do. My girlfriend tells me to stop all the time. So someone's picking at their nails and you're like, just to let you know, it's a little bit bothersome for me, for you to do that. And they go, oh, wow, you're such a power strangler in this relationship. And then the Venus in Aquarius would be like, I understand you saying that, but I just am telling you that I don't prefer it. And, you give them that second try. And then if they say, all right, I'll stop, but then they continue to do it, you'll say it again. If you don't mind, like that, I asked you to stop that and it does bother me. And they go, all right, I'll stop. And then they don't stop. Venus in Aquarius is methodical about okay, so you're not going to stop that. I would prefer that you did. You're not stopping it. I feel that that's disrespectful, and I kind of feel like we should talk about it or whatever, but it is bothersome to me. I'm just asking you to stop. And if they just don't cave on it, then Venus in Aquarius is just that's a functional level of communication that you've asked for, that they're being disrespectful to. If they've got a habit of it, and like I do, and I say, I'm so sorry, and it's something I'll have to work on, Venus in Aquarius can hold that. They can hold it if someone has a hard time letting go of a habit. This is all relationship stuff that Saturn is willing to hold the space for and work through in this combination, so that they don't just fling somebody off who could be a good lover, but they do one little thing and the Venus in Aquarius is insulted, or another Venus placement would be insulted by it, not experiment with it, not communicate with it, and ultimately let them go when they could have been a good relationship. They just had this one thing that you didn't communicate. Venus in Aquarius will route these things out and communicate with them. It sucks that my phone is making the noise that it is right now. I should turn it down, but it's over there. So, this is the nature of Venus being delighted by Saturn, and by being close to exaltation in Pisces, it's willing to try the pie before it buys. It sees, Venus in Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. It's just open to feeling what feels good. And they move towards what feels good. And they'll move towards a partner that feels good. And they'll experiment to see is my feeling that this feels good a fantasy of mine, or can I see it practically, functionally working out in a relationship? And they'll test it. And this is what Venus needs. This is really one of the best positions for Venus. I'd say it's the second best. Next up, Venus in Pisces. This is the second best position for Venus by sign. And it just goes to show that, Venus being in Pisces, having this open-hearted consciousness that will open up to everything, but doesn't fully give of itself until it has proven to work. This is the nature that Venus is supposed to be at its best. When Venus is in Virgo, it closes itself off from everything until it finds an idea of something that feels closest to what it is, and it'll usually be something that's not flashy. It'll be something that's like easy to maintain, that's not too much work. That's Venus in Virgo. Venus in Pisces is willing to work and wants to work together to sentimentally bond with a partner, is excited when the tension of it not working is there, but then we make it work. We make it happen together. It's like a yoga position. Saturn is like the penultimate yogi. And, we could say that it sucks that my limbs, I go to sleep and I wake up and my limbs, they need a stretch. Yogis say is worth it, because when you stretch, oh God, it feels so good. I'm glad that my body gets stuck with its tendons so that I can pop them all open, and it's delicious. It's better for the experience. This is how Venus at its best works, is it works through difficulties in the relationship and enjoys it the whole way through, and is even glad that there are inroads to prove that we can get past these little complications. It's again, Venus, the water Svadhisthana chakra, in the first chakra. It's in Aquarius. It's willing, it needs to work through these things. The only step that keeps it away from Pisces is that the Venus in Aquarius is just a little bit more reserved. Just a little bit too reserved to be the best Venus can be by sign. By being in Saturn, it can get delays in love compared to Venus and Pisces. But those delays will ultimately make the cohesion with a partner that works that much more fulfilling. And it's amazing that this personality, when you know them, they can hold the door open for everybody to connect with them. And they are very open, social people, even more than Capricorn Venus. Aquarius Venus is an open door, social person that loves to hang out with everybody in a social way, but is honest about the Venusian connections that it makes that works best, that are most satisfying and most meaningful. And they aren't flirtatious in the way that they'll just talk to just anybody. They're looking for quality of connection. And it's a beautiful thing to behold. Now, I've already gone pretty far in my conversation here, longer than I wanted to, and that's the story of my life. Just going to read a little bit from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook, talking about interpretive guidelines for Venus and Aquarius. Remember, Venus is how we get affection. Venus in Aquarius expresses affection freely, unconventionally, flirtatiously, and experimentally. They have a detached, impersonal attitude. They're kind of above the conversation. And this can interfere with getting into close relationships. Others might consider this person to be rather cold and aloof. But it's Saturn's caution that's standing above it. And when they do finally connect, they are all the happier and they grip very deeply when they do finally connect. They enjoy exchanging theories, ideas, and imaginative, often humorous fantasies with a loved one, talking about stories and experiences and things that they find funny and personal experiences that have happened to them, which again is just an open door for more enjoyment and free, happy conversation that is conducive to the value that Venus wants to have and give. Venus wants to have value to others because that's what attracts others to us. It's the sentimental bone of play that the funny bone Aquarius always brings to everybody, and everyone tends to like this person having them around. Love and social urges are colored by individualistic freedom, extremism, and rebelliousness. This can definitely be a Venus and Aquarius consciousness. There is a need for active socializing with many people in order to give fully of the self's emotions. The Aquarius is the underdog, the underbelly of everybody. And these people like to be able to hang out in an earthy way with, they can speak the high talk of like someone in a business suit going to a business meeting. Aquarius can have its glasses on and actually chat with them about things going on in trends and things like that. They can be ubiquitous and ambiguous in their class, in their cultural role. They want to be kind of open to everybody in a certain way. And they can talk to a construction worker with an orange safety suit on and big muddy boots, and the Aquarius can laugh with them just as hard as they can with some very refined business person. And they hope that their partner would allow them to do this as well, because this is a sharing of love to all that Venus Aquarius kind of conveys naturally. Again, ultimately, whatever they do connect with, they connect with deeply, because it's Venus in a fixed sign. They will connect deeply with their partner, especially if their partner gives them the openness and appreciation for how open the Venus in Aquarius is to all types of people. If you give the Venus in Aquarius the freedom to talk to everyone at the party, they will come to you and show you their appreciation for you specifically. And they'll make inroads to show people that you're their special person, if that's where the Venus and Aquarius person's at. So, that was another rendition. Now let's take our final look at Erotic Astrology by Phylis Vega. This is us talking about Venus and Aquarius at a sort of romantic, love-making kind of energy. This is Venus and Aquarius in Erotic Astrology. Essentially an intellectual, you live more in your mind than in your body. Yet, despite your open, friendly manner, you somehow can come off as cool and detached and not necessarily grabbing anything too hot too quick. Your freewheeling attitudes concerning standards of behavior is an unusual to the point of eccentricity, and you set your own rules. Since your head is usually somewhere in the clouds, you're often oblivious to the fact that someone might be attracted to you. This is this friend zone that Venus and Aquarius abides by so that it can feel people out before making the bigger connect. You get noticed because you're offbeat and original, and people respect the way you charmingly champion the underdog, even when it puts you in the line of fire. There's a social regard here in Venus and Aquarius that, again, they want to be appreciated for. Friendship, rather than sex or romance, is at the foundation of your intimate relationships. And there's a good chance that you'll become involved with a broad spectrum of people during your lifetime. In a relationship, you're looking for intellectual rapport, and you're attracted to individuals who are quirky in their own right. It's easy for others to be with you because you don't make emotional demands, and your attitude lends your romantic alliances a feeling of freedom and respect, which you also request to be reflected back at you. You give people the freedom to be who they are and what they want, and you expect the same. And it's interesting that such a person can be so open, they can be everything to everyone, but they can also ultimately land on specific grooves, because Venus is still in a fixed sign here. But it's fixed air. Air tends to be mutable and sees all the things all around it, but there's a fixity here. It's the fixed function of air that allows you to be both everything to everybody, but also be very specifically what you are to the individual who's taking you in. So, that was a long video. I tends to be for these well-placed Venus placements, I like give it a bit of air. Ha. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys enjoyed the way I talked about this sign combination. Let me know in the comments if you jived with it and if you dug it. I'm Dustin for Howtorockastrology. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the other side.